Hello and welcome back to the channel for another Power of the Doctor themed video. The Power of the Doctor isn't just the final episode for the 13th Doctor, it's also the final story for her companions, Yaz and Dan. I've previously speculated about how Dan might leave the TARDIS, and you can watch that video on the channel if you haven't already. But today we're going to be turning our attention to the 13th Doctor's other companion, to Yaz, who's a very different beast to Dan in many ways because she's been around for so much longer. I mean, Yaz will have appeared in every single 13th Doctor story by the time this special goes out. She's been around for the whole of her tenure, she's always been there, and it's the first time we've seen a companion like this since the days of classic Doctor Who, with the likes of Tegan or Jamie, who appeared in the vast majority of their respective Doctors' adventures. So it's difficult to imagine what it might actually take for Yaz to leave the TARDIS after being around for so long. But as with any companion exit, there are sort of three main avenues that they could take. So Yaz could leave the Doctor willingly, she could leave the Doctor unwillingly, or she could die. So let's go through all those options. So first of all, Yaz could leave the Doctor willingly, she could leave her by choice. Now obviously Yaz has become very attached to the Doctor over the course of her time in the TARDIS, particularly in recent stories with the addition of the Thasmin plotline. So is it really plausible, is it really conceivable that Yaz would choose to leave the Doctor of her own volition? Well, yes and no, I think, because as we saw in Legend of the Sea Devils, the Doctor and Yaz confessed their feelings for each other, but the Doctor chose to put her foot down and say to Yaz, I can't enter into a relationship with you, it's not going to work. And you can sort of see in that final scene, perhaps the seeds of doubts being sown there, with Yaz, with that sort of look of disappointment she has on her face. Clearly it's not the answer that she was looking for, so perhaps, I guess it's conceivable that Yaz will sort of almost outgrow the Doctor or mature herself and sort of say to the Doctor, I'm not going to stick around any longer, I'm going to go off because this isn't healthy for me. Which I could sort of see happening, maybe, like a sort of Martha Jones style exit. But ultimately, personally speaking, I think I'd rather they didn't part on bad terms if that can possibly be helped. Because I just think, to leave a sour taste in both their mouths would be a real shame, really, because they have had this friendship together. They've had, these 3 seasons, however many years that's been from the Doctor and Yaz's perspective and universe. They've spent a lot of time together, and I just think, to leave a sour taste in the mouth and to end on a bad note would be a bit of a shame, really. I mean, it's kind of going to be a bit difficult anyway, because obviously, that relationship isn't ultimately going to materialise, I suppose, because of the 13th Doctor regenerating and just the whole circumstances of that. So clearly Yaz is never quite going to get what she wants from the Doctor. Clearly that's never going to happen. And so I guess she's maybe going to have that moment of realisation, in this special at some point, and then make that decision to leave and to get out there, before it's too late. I mean, I guess the fact that we've got Ace and Tegan in the story as well, 2 previous companions of the Doctor who obviously left the Doctor on their own terms and went off and did their own thing. I guess that is potentially going to be a bit of an eye-opener for Yaz in terms of showing her that there is life after the Doctor. And perhaps that'll sort of play into things and sort of inspire her to leave and to go off and do her own thing and be her own person, just like Ace and Tegan have been. In our most recent collab, Miles and I discussed this very dilemma, and here is what we had to say.
After all the stuff they've built up, Yaz has got to go in some way that she can't get back to the Doctor, because she won't. I just can't see.
I still think she might choose, if she knew the Doctor was dying and not going to be
the same,
then I guess.
But then why would she do that?
That
is really superficial. That's like, I fancy this you.
Yeah.
I don't fancy David Tennant.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'd still like them to part on good terms if there's a way of getting to that point where maybe they both kind of realise it's not going to work. Yeah, I'd like a divorce, I guess. That's the closest thing I guess I could like.
Happy ending. The Centenary special ends in a divorce.
Yeah,
I just think it's just like a bit too quiet,
a bit too abrupt,
a bit too weak, really.
Yeah.
So the second option is that Yaz could leave the Doctor unwillingly. Some of the stuff I've just been discussing in the first part of this video could potentially play into this type of exit as well, but with the crucial difference being that the Doctor makes that decision, for Yaz to stay behind rather than Yaz herself. Perhaps Yaz doesn't feel ready to make that decision herself. Perhaps the Doctor can see that she's outgrown her or that things aren't going to work and that Yaz just needs that little bit of prompting, to be her best person and to do her own thing. Obviously, we've seen stuff like this in the past, with Rose in Parting of the Ways, or with Clara in The Time of the Doctor, or even further back, to the first Doctor's era with Susan in the Dalek Invasion of Earth. So I think this could work potentially, although the optics of it would need to be handled carefully. You wouldn't want it to come across the wrong way, with the Doctor sort of forcing Yaz out and with Yaz having no choice in the matter at all. I mean, it's also possible another sort of external force will come into play, much like we saw with Rose in Doomsday, where, she was stranded against her will and against the Doctor's will in the parallel universe. Perhaps something like that will happen that neither Yaz or the Doctor can control, and we'll have this sort of tragic ending for the character, where there's this enforced separation between her and the Doctor. Or they could go with a third option, which is basically the same as this, but Yaz doesn't make it out alive, she dies. Now, like I said in the Dan video, Chibnall hasn't chosen to kill off any of his companions thus far. Ryan and Graham both had a life after the Doctor. I'm fairly sure that Dan will as well. And if I'm honest, I think Yaz will as well. I think to kill her off would be the wrong decision, personally. I think it would be a disservice to the character. I think it would be unnecessarily sort of distressing for the viewer as well. And I just think, overall, you've got the 13th Doctor dying here. I don't think we need another death, to go alongside that. I think it's enough for your Doctor to be dying. I don't think you need to kill off the companion as well. I think that would be overkill. And also potentially, distract from the Doctor's death as well. You want that to be the main focus of attention. You don't want kind of Yaz's death coming in at the last minute of the 11th hour to sort of distract from that and take the focus away from the 13th Doctor. Obviously, you can't rule it out completely, it could still happen. There could be this tragic twist to Yaz's story, but it's not something I personally see them rolling with. So in summary, I think and hope that Yaz and the Doctor will part on good terms. I think she'll live to fight another day and return to her life on Earth. Obviously, as a better person than the one she was when she left, as a better person for knowing the Doctor. And perhaps even inspired by Tegan and Ace as well, she'll set herself up as some sort of, Earth defender of some description, and maybe she'll join units, maybe she'll do something else, maybe she'll team up with Graham and Ryan and Dan as well, perhaps. But as far as Tasman is concerned, like I say, I do hope it can end on good terms for those characters. I think it would be a shame for them to have sour tastes in their mouth after all these adventures spent together and all this time spent together and that friendship they've built up over these past 4 years worth of stories. But at the same time, there is going to have to be a moment of realisation there between them, discussion that takes place where they decide to go their separate ways, I guess. And I guess as well, if the Doctor lets on to Yaz that she knows she's about to die, then that'll play into it as well. Those are my thoughts on how Yaz might leave, but what do you think? Which option do you think is the most likely? And do you agree or disagree with any of the theories I've put forward here? Whatever your thoughts, please make them known in the comments section below. Please do leave a like if you have enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new for more Power of the Doctor content in the coming days. And if you'd like to go one step further, you can support the channel on Patreon via the link in the video description. But until the next one, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.